wrote a Broadway.com article about this, was going to the bodega, the little corner store on my corner with my abuela, who was not really my abuela. She was the lady who took care of me while my parents worked. And she was a compulsive gambler. So I would go with her, and back in the 80s, there were 3 illegal slot machines in the back room of the bodega. And so I would eat now and laters, and she didn't have the strength to pull the arm, so I would pull the arm. And this is where we spent 3 hours a day. And so, you know, but that corner store being sort of the epicenter of a community, that's among the DNA of my first sort of childhood memories. And so, you know, that was stuck to mine. And also, you know, it's crazy, Northern Manhattan. It really is this landscape unlike the rest of New York, because I actually just went, there's a great exhibit in the Museum of the City of New York called Planning the Grid. You guys know Manhattan, it's like super gridded, 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue. That didn't happen north of 155th Street. That all got sort of gridded about a century later. Wow. And it's because it's hard to grid. There's hills and mountains and all these sort of, there's these crazy backdrops, and it sort of has never quite been tamed by urban life, and so it really is like nowhere else in the world.
Well, there were certainly slot machines in your early life, but what kind of music influences did you have?
Well, you know, it was a pretty steady diet of everything. My parents were both born in Puerto Rico. My mom grew up in the U.S., and my dad moved here when I was 18. And one of the things they had in common were cast albums. So we listened to a lot of Latin music, and Gran Combo, and Ruben Blades, and Juan Luis Guerra, and 440, but then also Man of La Mancha. It was sort of like the Latin music was the music for the party, and then while we cleaned up the party, we put on Man of La Mancha or Camelot. You know, you're sweeping up balloons if ever would I. So it was all sort of, and my parents just had a huge record collection, and I remember just really poring over them and trying all of them out on our record player, and you know, being the kid who like did all the Thriller moves at the dance party, like Linda's gonna do the dance from Thriller now. You know, I was that kid, and then hip hop was sort of the music I listened to with my friends. I had this bus driver. The bus driver who took us to school was sort of a rapper who never made it. His name was Billy Baker, and his brother had a single, and he would rap to us every day to and from school, and he taught us, you know, it was eclectic. It was not only, you know, Rapper's Delight and Beastie Boys, but also Beef by KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions, and I remember he made us memorize this rap about vegetarianism. That is, I can still do it now. Like, I've never even heard the song.
What can you give us?
Yeah, it was beef, water relief. When will this poisonous product cease? This is another public service announcement. You can believe it, or you can doubt it. I'm doing it like Billy Baker. Let us begin now with the cow. The way it gets to your plate, I mean, and then it gets to Elijah Muhammad, and it gets into a whole other thing. But we did this every day to and from school. It's kind of crazy in retrospect.
You know, I would call that an influence, absolutely. And you mentioned before, we have students here from Booker T. Washington, and which is amazing. And as you know, an amazing performing arts high school here in Dallas. And what happened in your schooling or did something happen in your early schooling that really influenced you in the creation of theater?
Yeah, well, you know, I went to, I was very lucky. I hit the lotto at age 5, and then I got into a magnet public school that was K through 12. So I actually got an amazing free public education, which is just incredibly rare, and especially in New York. And the elementary school, in 6th grade, it sort of built up to 6th grade, and then our high school was 7 through 12, and the culmination of 6th grade was the 6th grade play. And everyone in the school had to see the 6th grade play, no matter what grade you were in. And I remember even in 1st grade and 2nd grade, like, what are they going to pick for our 6th grade play? You know, in kindergarten they did West Side Story. In 1st grade they did Fiddler on the Roof. In 2nd grade they did a mashup of The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz, just sort of the best of both songs. Oklahoma, Peter Pan, and Peter Pan, they got to fly. And then by the time I got to 6th grade, and here's where the lethal dosage, here's where I got bitten by the radioactive spider. They ran out of age-appropriate musicals for 6th graders. So we did a medley of the previous 6 years' musicals.
Oh my God.
So I was Conrad Birdie, a cowhand in Oklahoma, an out-of-pearl backup munchkin, a Captain Hook, Bernardo, and a son in Fiddler on the Roof. This is a 4-hour thing our parents had to say. But I was Conrad Birdie. I was 12 years old. I was about 3 feet tall. I could not, get a girl to pay attention to me if I threw a rock at her. But getting to play Conrad Birdie, suddenly I played this part where every girl in the grade literally had to pretend to be in love with me. And I said, well, I'm clearly doing this for the rest of my life. I never looked back after that.
Well, and then moving forward, because you're clearly a 21st century Renaissance man. The performance, the writing, the theater, the music. But I'm so fascinated by Freestyle Love Supreme, your group. And is it hip hop, rap, and spoken word, or how would you describe it and tell us about it?
Yeah, well, it's funny. It sort of developed concurrently with working on In the Heights. I met Tommy Kail, who you saw in the video, right out of college. And he had started a theater company with 3 friends who had all gone to Wesleyan. I knew 2 of them, but I didn't know Tommy and I didn't know Anthony. And Anthony was a huge freestyler. He loved to do it, and he was a producing partner in the early days of Heights. And so between rehearsals and on breaks, he would come in and be like, let's freestyle, let's freestyle. I'd be like, okay, and I'd go to the piano and we'd just freestyle about whatever was sort of happening. And he was like, we have to do this on stage. And I was like, oh. I was terrified of doing it. I remember I had friends in high school who were amazing at freestyling, getting whatever they wanted in their heads to rhyme. And I remember being the shy high schooler who was like, pass it. And then, I don't know when I got fearless about it, but it really came out as of just doing it with Anthony and getting our reps in, and then doing it in front of an audience. And then it developed very, organically. We used to rap to sort of pre-produced beats that we would play, and we would just rap whatever the audience gave us over. And then we found this guy named Chris Sullivan, who was also known as Shockwave, who was this amazing beatboxer. And suddenly it was like a whole new show because he could speed up and slow down with us, and he did all this amazing theater stuff as well. And so it was sort of the gig that kind of kept us creatively charged in the 8-year process that it took to get Heights going. And I think they informed each other. I think I got really fearless on stage because there's nothing more terrifying than being like, all right, what's the word? Here's the show. It's really a terrifying thing, but also, the things that would come out of that were really helpful in terms of writing Heights, and I feel like the raps I wrote for Heights, I really wanted them to feel like someone who's searching for words as he's talking. It shouldn't feel like, this perfectly put together thing. Because musical theater at its best is when you see the actors making discoveries in real time. The really good actors, it feels like they're singing it for you for the first time. And I really tried to infuse the entire show with that, but it was really helpful with the hip-hop sections of it.
And you're right, the show comes across that way, but certainly, even though that you're performing freestyle may have come a little later, you started writing music at a young age, didn't you?
Yeah.
Really young?
Yeah, I have a tape record, a Fisher Price tape of me at age 4, and it's actually like Dr. Seuss. There used to be these Dr. Seuss cassettes, and on the other side it said, "Record your own world of sound." And the side Bs would be blank, so that you could record whatever you wanted in your Fisher Price recorder. And I have a song, I could sing it to you right now. And it was called "The Garbage Pail Kids Are in Town." And it goes, I'm going to sing it in 4-year-old voice. The garbage pail kids are in town. Oh, they are so ugly, you wouldn't want to see them. Even if you made your own. If you made your own, you have to make them funny or ugly. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Garbage pail kids are in town.
So you finished that song and immediately wrote In the Heights, right?
Yeah, it was one day the next. Huge leap.
Because, we started off by saying you're often best known for riding in the heights, but really, when did that process begin? Because there were several years of development attached.
I mean, I was very lucky again. Like I said, I went to this school, and we had, probably not unlike Booker T. You will every time I say it, okay? We had 3 productions a year. We would do a play in the fall, a musical in the winter, and then we had this thing called Brick Prison in the spring, where it was 5 student-written plays, and they were student-written and student-directed. And so I started writing 20-minute plays in high school, and I actually wrote 2 original musicals my junior and senior year. The first one was called Nightmare in D Major. That's not a pretentious title at all. And then the second one was called 7 Minutes in Heaven, and it was about that first unchaperoned party you go to in 7th grade, and we cast 7th and 8th graders in it, and I think the kid's first kiss was actually in our play. It was really this amazing testing ground to be able to, and empowering. I went into college, and I feel like I had already done a lot of reps. So it was, In the Heights came out of my desire to write a full-length show. I was 19 years old. Like at Hunter, it was student-run. As long as you proved you weren't going to burn down the place, you applied for a space, and they would give you a little budget and a space. I actually shared the theater space with a dance group, so we couldn't put any sets in the ground. It all had to roll because it was on Dance Marley. I wrote it in a feverish sort of winter break, 3-week span. I had these characters, I had an outline, it all sort of poured out. I set it in a neighborhood I knew very well, just 3 blocks south of where I grew up. And I also was, the other part, there's always a girl involved, there's always a romantic aspect of it. My high school sweetheart and I had been together from 10th grade through that year, and she was studying abroad, and it was the first time we were spending any time apart, so it was also all this, angsty energy that I could not pour into the relationship anymore because she was gone. And so that all went into the show, and that was this enormous sort of creative burst. And it was an 80-minute one-act, and it was a hit on campus because there were so few Latino kids who do theater at Wesleyan that I had to sort of search far afield for my cast. So it was that thing of everyone's got a friend in the show, we have to go see Ralphie, he's in a play. It was not just theater kids seeing theater kids, it was a really campus-wide thing, just because I had to go all over to get my kids. So that was sort of the initial sort of birth. Political events, I covered any new restaurant that was opening. I covered just everything in that neighborhood. So I knew the neighborhood cold. But I can also tell you the hot spots to eat.
And you got to do it for free. And then you wrote commercial jingles.
Yeah. Again, this is my father helping me pay the rent. He works. He's right there actually. Give him a. But he's in political consulting, so I was just a cheap source of labor for him. He would say, Lin Manuel, we have an Al Sharpton spot that's going to be on BLS. I need a minute of smooth jazz for the spot. And so I would go and write a minute. I did jingles for Elliot Spitzer, and I did jingles for, that didn't go end so well, but it was a good campaign. And sort of whatever candidates he needed me to write music for, and that sort of helped pay the bills. And I taught 7th grade English, and I danced at bar mitzvahs, and you do what you can so you can do what you love. That's the takeaway there.
Well, what I love about that story is that for artists, there's always a path for artists. But what I love now is that I turn on television and there's Lin Manuel Miranda, and I say, "Hey, Lin's on television." I think I've seen you on House.
Yeah.
You play Grandma on Modern Family.
Yeah.
Is that the burgeoning part of your career, do you think, television?
I think, no, that's always going to be the gravy and the icing on the cake. I really see myself as a writer at the end of the day. However, House calls, I do not say no. And House was a really special case because the executive producer of that show was a huge Heights fan. And I'll tell it to you the way she told it to me, which was, as soon as I knew we were sending House to an insane asylum in season 6, I thought of you. But the writers hadn't seen In the Heights, so she showed them the clip of me winning the Tony. So that manic energy I'm experiencing as my dreams are coming true and like, oh, what am I supposed to say? That's exactly what I used to play that part in the Heights, who had a manic disorder. And it was just a real thrill. So that's always sort of, I take those as they come. I don't take too much stock in it. I just have, I have fun when they arrive.
It's clearly a talent, but you must be so proud of your work on Sesame Street and the Electric Company.
Yeah, well, that really came out of working with my friends as well. Bill, who was a co-arranger on Heights, and who he was sort of the college buddy who really came with me. We were the same year at Wesleyan, and he was with me at every step of the way. He became the music supervisor at Sesame Street. So just like I used to get calls from my dad, I now get calls. Lin, it's Bill, we need to do a Latin episode, and there's a sheep with a clap, and rap the sheep. Okay, or, Murray, I sing the Murray Had a Little Lamb theme song, and if you have little kids, and he wrote that theme song, and it's like, Lin, we need you to rap about Murray Had a Little Lamb. I'm like, okay. And so I get these calls from my friends to, announce a show. Like everyone, that was like a formative part of my development. So to get to hang with Snuffy and Elvis. It's pretty dope.
I would love it. And then you got the call for West Side Story for the recent revival.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about your work on West Side Story.
Yeah, it was this crazy experiment. I think if it had been anyone else, if it had been some director out of the blue saying, hey, I want to translate it, I would have said no. West Side Story is a classic, don't touch it. But Arthur Lawrence called me. And he was the book writer, and he sort of said, he had very personal reasons for wanting to try this experiment. His partner who had passed away was fluent in Spanish, and he wanted to sort of try this bilingual version. And he said, I have a new draft. Would you take a look at the I just sort of put dummy Spanish where I want the Spanish. Would you vet it? And that sort of became me working with Sondheim on translations for the songs. Which was, to get to work with those guys. Remember, I was Bernardo in the 6th grade 4-hour class. So that was a very long road to travel to suddenly I'm in the room with Sondheim saying, keep the rhyme scheme the same, but just do whatever images you want. It's a crazy experience.
So you're all of a sudden connected with Sondheim, and you just finished Merrily Roll Along at Encores.
Yeah, which was, that's one of the great Sondheim scores, and I don't know if you're familiar with Encores, but they sort of do work that didn't necessarily get its due. Chicago, the production still running on Broadway came out of an Encores reading. Chicago is this perfect musical that we all know and love. The problem is it came out the same week as Chorus Line. And that was the juggernaut. And Chicago did okay, but didn't get its due. And then Encores did it, and it went on to have this amazing second life in this movie. And so that's what Encores does really well. And Merrily is sort of it's one of the great Sondheim scores, but it only ran 16 performances on Broadway and had this disastrous preview period and has this very storied history. And the irony for me, one, to get that call to be asked to audition from James and Steve, but is that my part in Merrily was even more autobiographical than it's not, because I'm playing a lyricist. I got to play Charlie Kringus, who is this lyricist who, gets his, a hit with this song. It's about the rise and disillusionment of this friendship. The difficult thing about the show is it's told backwards. So you meet the characters when they're all screaming at each other and can't stand each other. And the last scene of the show is when they all first meet. And so it was very emotional for me for many reasons. And Steve is really generous. He's so much more generous with actors, I think, than he is with almost anyone else. And so it sort of really, we really became friends on that production, even more so than West Side Story, where I was kind of doing a gig. With this, we really got to talk about these characters and playing a lyricist and singing some of those songs. It was just an amazing, amazing experience.
So what happens tomorrow, Lin, if your phone rings and someone says, Merrily's going to Broadway?
Oof. I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea, because I don't know how I can top the experience of 10 days of rehearsal with your heroes, a sitz pro with a 30-piece orchestra, 25-piece orchestra, and 2 weeks and you're done. And then I go back to being a writer the next day. I turn right back into Clark Kent, and it's like, and I get back on the train, and it's lovely. So I don't know, because I have a busy year. But I would certainly think about it, because it was such a wonderful experience. If I could do it with that cast, who became fast, lifelong friends, I would certainly think about it.
Did any of you get to see Bring It On when it was in Dallas recently?
Yeah, it really was wild. I mean, everything is forever on YouTube. That's the other crazy thing. And for me, the fun of YouTube, you know, I have a funny relationship with YouTube because I really created a lot of our First Heights commercials out of fear that no one would come to see my show. You know, we had a great advertising company in Spotco, and they know how to get the traditional theater goer. But I knew that people beyond the traditional theater goer would be interested in the show. So I made these YouTubes where it would be me and Shockwave on the train rapping, "You gotta come see this show," and then the train would go by, and that would be the video. And just continue, and then started to make spoofs. We made a spoof of High School Musical that also spoofed Spring Awakening. And I just knew that I was reaching, I just wanted to make sure people knew this was a fun show, and I wanted to go beyond the reach of print ads and TV ads because they only do so much. And then, you know, when I was in the show, it became my creative outlet. You know, when you're doing 8 shows a week, you don't have time for much else. So I said, what YouTube can we film around here between shows? You know, it became sort of another creative endeavor, and those things are such a weird mix of like, something I poured as much heart into that, like Run This Town spoof, as I did into my work on In the Heights. It was sort of, it became sort of a way for this sort of larger community and fans of the show to sort of coalesce.
And now your wedding reception has 2.5 million hits.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that thing is my legacy. More people have seen that than have seen my show, let's be real. 2.5 million hits, and we surprised her, which was all I really wanted. But it was a pretty crazy day. Most of you will recognize my dad from that video, where he sang that high G, and he let us know it all the time. He said, "I sing that high G," and so we'd be rehearsing these other parts, and he'd be like, "No!" So it was, you know, we spent about a month rehearsing that in secret, and Bring It On was my alibi. You know, the week of, Vanessa would be like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "Andy called another meeting." And then we'd go rehearse L'Chaim in his studio.
And was your wife, your now wife Vanessa, surprised? I mean, did she truly?
I mean, you can tell she's totally surprised. So yeah, that was a real treat. And for me, the best part, watch the video again, the part where she loses it, it's not to see me singing. She sees that every 5 seconds in our house. She expects that. It's actually when the groomsmen come out and she sees her brother. Her brother's on the end of the line. Her brother's in real estate. He doesn't sing or dance. Her dad's a ham. So that was not even entirely unexpected. When she saw her brother, and it's like, oh my God, my brother's in a kick line, and she saw how many people really threw themselves into it and committed it, that's when she really sort of got overwhelmed. That's my favorite part.
When you get home tonight, if you haven't seen it, I think it's Surprise for Vanessa.
Yeah, Vanessa's wedding surprise.
Vanessa's wedding surprise. It's better than Glee. You have
to lyrics. Like physically on paper, or like where was I?
Where were you?
Oh,
that must be the question.
That's a great question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me before. I can tell you that the weirdest physical place was in Bring It On. We had to like write this new ending, and we had not a lot of time before the first preview, and so I found a paper plate, and a lot of the lyrics for the finale are written on a paper plate that I found in the cafeteria. Andy still has the paper plate. But in terms of the oh well, you know what? Actually, here's the thing. We had a family trip on the Queen Mary. We did a transatlantic trip. It was between Off-Broadway and Broadway? Yeah. Or was it before Off-Broadway? And I had to, the Usnavi Abuela song was not done yet. And I wrote the entire, there's a section in that song where you learn the origin of Usnavi's name. And I won't give it away. I wrote that on a like piano lounge bar on the Queen Mary, sort of between New York and London, and it was like, you know, like 3 a.m. when it was, you know, when the festivities had stopped. So that's the weirdest place I've ever been.
And I think the Smithsonian should have the plate. A Booker T student asked, "What about?" We should have shots, don't you think?
We're still in high school. We should.
Yeah. We have to work for them. What advice would you give to an aspiring actress about auditioning?
Think of auditioning as the job and getting the job as the gravy. You will not get 99% of the jobs you go out for. It's that real, the percentage may be higher. You can take solace in the fact that most of this will have nothing to do with your talent and everything to do with what that person is looking for. I can't tell you how many talented girls with brown hair we couldn't cast because we had 3 other girls with curly brown hair. It has nothing to do with your talent, or you look too much like this other person who is in a similar track. And what we're looking for at any given time, we have an actor in Bring It On who is amazing. And we were going to cast, he was sort of on our radar for this tour to play Sonny, but we lost one of our actors to another play the week before he came in. And he came in, and if he had come in the week before, he wouldn't have gotten the job. We wouldn't have had a job for him to get. But because John Rule went to go do this play, he suddenly had this opportunity and just smashed it. So it has so little to do with your actual talent. You can't be discouraged when you don't get the job. You have to treat auditioning as the job. Do whatever you do to pay the rent. That's a separate thing. But treat auditioning as the job, and what can I learn from this audition, and what can I take away? The really good choreographers, it feels more like a class than an audition anyway. I love going to Andy's dance calls because he really tries to give you as much information as he can so you can succeed. So even if you've left at the end of the day, you worked with Andy Blank and you were okay. And that's really important. And so I think that's the best advice because it's so easy to get discouraged. That's the best advice I can give.
And it is, and I think that's what's amazing about theater and music artists is working through the sometimes discouragement. Someone asks, and I think it goes along with this, what were the main struggles with riding in the Heights?
Besides the obvious ones of financial security and am I meant to be doing this and, insert rent question here, will I lose my dignity, will someone care? The larger questions were can we stay true to what we think the show can be and still succeed on our terms? I 2 years after my senior year in high school, The Cake Man came out on Broadway and died after 68 performances. This was a show I thought was going to save my career and be my dream show. You talk about that show, it's my dream show. It was Ruben Blades, it was Mark Anthony, it was a Paul Simon score. We'd never written for Broadway. It was one of my favorite songwriters saying, this thing can't lose, this will be my dream show. And it just didn't work, and it didn't last. And I was really heartbroken by it. But I was also heartbroken by the fact that it was 40 years after West Side Story, and the only story we could seem to tell on stage with Latinos was knife-wielding murderers in the 1950s. What a specific subset. Not even killers, not even crime, but knife-wielding murderers in the 1950s. And so I wanted to write a show where, 3 days go by and one Latino doesn't pull a knife on another Latino or another person. And I wanted to stay true to that. And I'll tell you, there were producers who were like, we like the music, we like the world, but where is the great? Where are the drugs? Where are the crime? I was like, they're everywhere. Why do we have to tell it? They're in every corner of the city. Why is the onus on us to make that part of our story just because you see that in the news? That was really important to me that we tell the story we wanted to tell, and we were lucky to find producers that allowed us to do that.
Well, there's so many great questions here, but we really out of time. But the question that I keep seeing over and over in the stack is, would you perform something for us? Can I get off the stage?
Okay, no, don't get off the stage. But give me the questions. What we'll do is I'll freestyle your questions and we'll try to get them all in. Okay. Do I need a beat? Yeah, who's going to beatbox for me? All right, come here. Ricco on beatbox tonight. Give up for Ricco, he's very brave. Is that live? Okay, so Now a little bit back from the mic, all right, you guys got me? Where's the impromptu sound check? Yeah. Okay, all right. Matt Laugh asks, what are you having, son? Whatever made you pick Alexander Hamilton? I addressed that in the earlier question. I'm going on to the next one. Thank you for your suggestion. Who is your greatest inspiration in life? Well, in order, God, my family, and my wife. So on to the next one. Let's keep it going. Oh, geez. My friend made a rap for you. Would you like to hear it, please? My name is Alicia Franese, or Franix, or the Hispanics. I'm frantic. I don't know what to say because I'm manic. I'll hear it after the show. Here we go. You will keep fucking great. Isn't it great? All right. Here we go. All right, let's not try to fix it. I'm Hamilton. I'm trying to get it done. It's kind of half done. I don't know what's happening, but please don't laugh, son. Who are your main inspirations as the youngin'? Well, I told you Moses, I take him and I brung him to you, and that's what I do. It's like a voodoo. So I'ma keep on taking this platter like it was poo-poo. Where's the observation that you're breaking down lyrics? I answered that already. You don't really have to hear it. Oh yeah, okay. This is really prudent. This is a question from a Booker T student. What advice would you give to inspiring actors without auditioning? Okay, we got repeats. I've been listening. Over the big struggles. You did that, pick up struggles. As a theater maker, what do you feel is the importance of creating theater in your hometown versus elsewhere? Like say elsewhere, welfare. That's a fair question. I don't know the answer, but I know that you should hold me closer, tiny dancer. In a good life, it's really kind of been good. I think I could write a thing about Dallas because of this sculpture place. You guys built a talent to that.